Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. So I'm so excited because Halloween is pretty much upon us. It is my favorite day of the year. It is my favorite time of the year. And unfortunately, my October TBR and like my full month so far really has not been as stellar as I was hoping it was going to be. I took a huge deviation this month from what I was going to read. I was going to read a lot of like kind of Halloween, harvesty, dark toned stories, and then I read a lot of really heavy books and was like, I need some fun palette cleansers, and I grabbed a bunch of like kind of fun, more lighthearted stories, as well as some of my more anticipated reads, and good lord, have a lot of them been a disappointment. So here's to hoping that November is better, and I will have my monthly wrap up soon. Even though it is still October, I will have that up sometime in November. But yeah, today let's talk about Certain Dark Things by Silvia Moreno-Garcia. So this was one of my most anticipated books of 2021. If you saw my video way back in January where I talked about all the upcoming releases I was excited for, I believe I did mention this. Along with another Torn Nightfire release, which was Nothing But Blackened Teeth by Cassandra Caw. And I heavily debated doing a review for that book as well, but I think I'm just going to throw it in my monthly wrap-up because it was just so short that I really don't think I could make a full-length video on how much I didn't enjoy reading that book. But I'll save that for my wrap-up. But let's talk about Certain Dark Things. This book, I believe, was originally published in 2016. It has kind of gained a cult following over the years, and after the success of Silvia Moreno-Garcia's hit Mexican Gothic, Torn Nightfire decided to bring it back into print. Now, I did read Mexican Gothic last year. I have very mixed feelings on that. I believe I gave it a 4-star rating, but it really teetered between a 3 and 4-star rating for me. This one, though, this was a 3-star read for me, and I would say that that is generous. Let me just read what this is. Let me read the summary for y'all. Welcome to Mexico City, an oasis in a sea of vampires. Domingo, a lonely garbage collecting street kid, is just trying to survive its heavily policed streets when a jaded vampire on the run swoops into his life. Adel, the descendant of Aztec blood drinkers, is smart, beautiful, and dangerous. Domingo is mesmerized. Adel needs to quickly escape the city, far from the rival narco-vampire clan relentlessly pursuing her. Her plan doesn't include Domingo, but Adel finds herself warming up to the scrappy young man as his undeniable charm. As the trail of corpses stretches behind them, local cops and crime bosses start closing in. Vampires, humans, cops, and criminals collide in the dark streets of Mexico City. Do Adel and Domingo stand a chance of making it out alive, or will the city devour them all? This is one of those cases where, like, the trailer gives away the whole movie. Except in this book, like, next to nothing happens. Like, this is, what, 300 pages? Not even. It's, like, 240 pages. And just nothing happens. Sorry, my bookmark is, like, in here. Let me take that out. But, like, just nothing happens. So, long story short, Domingo's a human. Adel is a vampire. She's from a very spoiled, rich family. And their paths collide. And chaos ensues, sort of. I don't know. They're being chased by, like, a street gang, cops, and like rival vampires. This wanted to be very Matrixy. This wanted to be very edgy and cool and different, and I really liked, I don't even want to say that. I have an issue when you take vampire lore and you say, screw that, I'm gonna fully rewrite it as my own. I think it's interesting that Silvia Moreno-Garcia took like, I don't know, The Walking Dead, the undead, myths from a bunch of different cultures and made those different types of vampires. So like the Mexican vampires are based off of creatures from Aztec lore. They do refer to Canadian vampires as Wendigos, which did greatly bother me, but whatever. The like English European vampires are obviously from like traditional kind of like Dracula, Bram Stoker mythology, whatever, but she did kind of go out of her way to be like, I don't turn into a bat, why would I do that, right? But then it's also like, it's because I turn into a bird, right? Or like, well, they keep saying in this damn story, like, vampires don't turn into mist, that's so stupid, right? Which is, I believe, taken from Bram Stoker's Dracula. It's definitely, like, vampires turning into mist is definitely something that's been around for a really long time. and they just completely disregard that. But in this novel, they can't call a vampire's familiar a familiar. They feel the need to call it Renfield, which is like, you're constantly dismissing the lore created by Bram Stoker to serve your novel, but you steal like the concept of Renfield. That just was so annoying. They're a familiar. They're called a vampire's familiar, all right? They are not Renfield. Renfield is a person. And I get it, it's supposed to be slang, but it's not like they have another term for it. I found the absolute rewriting of how familiars work and how like vampires work, and vampires aren't, you can't be turned into a vampire, you're born a vampire. Like, there's a lot of things very annoying. I will say the world building in this was really cool. There is like an entire like vampire encyclopedia in the back of this book, which is really cool to read, and it's about all the different types of vampires and how they came to be and what their different powers are. But it does become a little difficult to follow when you're reading the book, because there's so many different subspecies of vampires. They all can do different things. I don't like the idea that vampires aren't immortal in this, and I feel like Silvia Moreno-Garcia kind of backed herself into a corner rewriting the lore, because she definitely would contradict herself at times. There were things that she would write about how these like Aztec descendant vampires, they grow into very, very old age instead of being immortal, so they don't have children until they're like up in the hundreds, and even when they have that, they have like a child every couple of decades. But Adel's older sister is only like 5 years older than her, so that didn't quite make sense to me. And there's just a lot of like weird inconsistencies. Like the dog, I really liked the dog character. I think his name was Kuali. But he's been modified to be kind of like techie. Like he's got like this like bad tribal tattoo that glows, and I guess it just made him like enhanced and bigger. And just nobody really questions the fact that a dirt poor street kid is walking around with like $100,000 dog, and then like nobody wants to rob him for this dog. Like there were just so many weird inconsistencies for this. But I have to say the most disappointing part about this story were our two leads, Domingo and Adel. I found Domingo very annoying. I hated when the author would write, not necessarily from his perspective, but she would be writing from a third person perspective, but using sentences as if it was a first person perspective. Domingo is not very educated, so his dialect and his slang and his grammar is really, really bad, which isn't a problem for the character. But when all of a sudden I'm reading sentences, like actual prose that aren't quotes, in his voice, and the rest of the story is not like that, it was like a weird and jarring switch. And the grammar was atrocious whenever she would do that, which I also thought kind of discredited Domingo, because I almost felt like her grammar in the prose was worse than her grammar when he was speaking. It was very strange. Adel herself is probably the most spoiled character I've ever read about. She is absolutely jaded, as the back of the book says. She is entitled, she is snobby, she is reckless, she is very, very, very self-centered, just extremely, extremely unlikable. And then on top of that, they're supposed to be the good guys, and we have these other characters, like we have, I believe his name is Nick, which is like, ooh, Vampire Nick. We have Vampire Nick, who is also like reckless, and he's kind of supposed to be the foil for Adel, like he's who's pursuing her, but he's just as unlikable and reckless and entitled as she is. We have Nick's family's familiar, who's supposed to be kind of this voice of reason, but then all of a sudden we see a familiar with way more power and like foresight than a vampire, which I don't think would ever actually happen. And then we have, of course, our detective who is pursuing Domingo and Adel and Nick the vampire, and I believe her name is Anna, and she is just such a useless character. Like, she could have been used to really tell this story and really unravel what's happening and build up this like big climax, but she's kind of just thrown in there and like used to kind of push the plot forward and then kind of disposed of. And I thought her backstory was really interesting, and I really would have liked to go more into her backstory, because she is the most interesting character, I would say, in the novel, which isn't saying much. But I do like that she does kind of become this like crooked cop involved with the mob, but for kind of good reasons, and she has this crazy kind of Van Helsing style vampire hunter background that we don't really get to explore, and I thought that would have been really, really cool. It just felt like a missed opportunity with that character. And she has a lot of motivations, like she's very invested in the safety of her daughter, and she just felt like a character we really could have dove into and gotten more out of. And then what's the other one? There's like another vampire, like a revenant. I forget what his name is. I don't know, it doesn't matter, because he's just old and completely ignores all vampire mythology that I've ever read about. And he just does these like crazy, wacky, like superhuman things and has like a hunchback, and it made no sense. But the biggest problem that I had with this novel, apart from all of my little grievances, is this weird, creepy, unnerving romance between Adele and Domingo. This is like a minor spoiler alert. I don't really think it ruins much of anything for the book though. I don't know, maybe I'm just so angry that the scene happened that whatever. So Adele is 23. The author chose to make this girl 23. She's not like Edward Cullen, where she's just been perpetually 23 for like hundreds of years, because vampires are born, they're not made, and they're not immortal. So she's like actually 23. And Domingo is 17. And they have a forced romance. Like a really, really awkward forced romance. And I'm like, I'm sorry. This isn't like Romeo and Juliet. This is like modern times. A 23-year-old girl, especially somebody from like the aristocracy, is not gonna have anything in common with a 17-year-old street kid, right? Like this gets into like almost like grooming territory and like minor territory. Like this felt so inappropriate to read. It felt so inappropriate to read, especially because Adele just takes advantage of Domingo. She fully takes advantage of the fact that he's so enamored with this rich, high society vampire who's older than him and has seen more of the world than him. And he's 17, and she just takes advantage of that. And she takes advantage of that first, kind of in that like, will you be my familiar kind of way. But then she sleeps with him. And I found that scene so unbelievably inappropriate and gross and manipulative, and it just felt awful reading it. And the fact that this wasn't supposed to be like the scary part of the novel, like I could see if this was a story where like Adele was like the villain and she was corrupting this child, like yeah, that would be gross and disturbing to read about. But this isn't, it's not supposed to be gross and disturbing to read about. Like it's supposed to be this like awesome romance, like it's supposed to be like cute and like what the author wanted to happen. And I'm like, if you wanted to do that, make Adele like 19. Make her like 2 years older than him. Make her the same age. She chose to make this character 6 years older than an underage teenage boy. And it blew my mind. It blew my mind. Blew my mind. Oh, it felt so inappropriate to read. It was such a gross scene to read. And Adele is just such a selfish, spoiled girl. And it makes me just think like she is evil. And I kind of thought that if Moreno-Garcia was going to take this direction, it would be really cool to like unravel Adele as like a villain. But the book does not take that direction. Ugh, it's so infuriating. It was so gross and so inappropriate to read about. And I just felt like so icky afterwards, and not in like the, this was a brilliant horror novel that got under my skin. I was like, this is a crappy vampire romance that is just inappropriate. Oh, this was so disappointing. But no, I did give it 3 stars. It did borderline on 2, but I did give it 3 stars because I did kind of like the climactic fight at the end. I thought a lot of the vampire lore, even though it was a complete butchering of traditional vampire lore, was pretty cool. I really liked this, like, I don't know, like neo-noir Mexico City. I thought that was really cool, and I would like to read more about this like setting in this place, but these characters sucked. Oh my god, the story sucked. I don't know, really, like, have more of a plot than Nothing But Black and Teeth, but ugh, god. Cover's cool. The cover's cool. People don't really shower in this book either. They like go out of their way to like talk about the fact that like everybody's dirty. And like I get that it's like for the mood of the story, but it was a weird thing to include. It just, every time I was reading this book, it was always like, and he finally showered after a week. I was like, so gross, so gross. Anyways, that is my review of Certain Dark Things. Mexican Gothic was better. If you want to be introduced to Silvia Moreno-Garcia, Mexican Gothic is way, way, way better than this. I feel like they both have like similar leads. Their female leads are both very spoiled and entitled and kind of get what they want in the end. And that's just something I don't necessarily connect with. I have yet to like a female lead that Silvia Moreno-Garcia has written. But this didn't put me off reading her writing. I do know that this was written, what, 4 years before Mexican Gothic, and Mexican Gothic has come like miles since this. You can definitely see how she has matured as a writer. So I'm not going to be put off from reading Silvia Moreno-Garcia, but this just didn't quite work for me. Oh, well, I gotta stop reading vampire stories that try and like rewrite the vampire. Vampires are fine as they are. Let's just keep vampires as they are. It works. It works. It works when you don't mess with them. Anyways, that is all that I have for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching. As always, I post every Monday and Thursday, sometimes on Saturdays. And if you enjoy these videos, please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below, and I will catch you all in the next one. Mwah.